Keys, we spend a lot of time underwater, and for several reasons. The water's warm usually, it's clear, but more importantly, what we found is that by spending time underwater, you get a better appreciation of not only the habitat that fish live in, but also the behaviors of fish underwater. And there's several ways for us to get underwater here. One is by free diving. And free diving is the simplest way, where you have a mask, fins, and snorkel, and maybe a weight belt, and you go down to as long as you hold your breath, come back up. The other way is by scuba diving. And scuba diving is advantageous in the sense that you can stay underwater because you're breathing air from a compressed bottle of air. But the downside of that is that it's a very noisy, bubble-filled, valve rattling situation around that particular diver, so fish respond differently to that. So lately we've been toying with rebreathers, and the beauty of a rebreather is that it's absolutely noiseless underwater. The difference between a rebreather and scuba is that in scuba you're taking in a lungful of air and exhaling it into the open atmosphere. With a rebreather, you're basically breathing that same lungful of air over and over again in a cycle. The concept is relatively simple, but in reality it's a rather complicated process, so there is a fair amount of training that you have to go through to be safe on these things. In air, there's X amount of oxygen and X amount of nitrogen. So when you breathe in a lungful of that mix, your body inspires a tiny bit of oxygen. When you exhale some carbon dioxide. When you exhale into a rebreather, it goes through a canister with a chemical called a scrubber. And that scrubber basically takes all the carbon dioxide out of that exhaled lungful. Then along the side of the rebreather is also a bottle of oxygen which replenishes the small amount of oxygen that you depleted on your previous breath. It's a very quiet way to be underwater, and I think one of the best ways to observe fish in their natural environment without you being a cause of distraction.
Vida is brought to you by the Florida Keys and Key West. Come as you are.